So without a doubt, the biggest perk of having a 3D printing YouTube channel is getting access to the latest, greatest 3D printers and getting to try them out and review all of them. But unfortunately, because of the way that YouTube works, sometimes by the time I've published a video, I may not have had as much time on the machine as I want to, or it may not even be a review. It may be sponsored content that, pays the bills. Truthfully, sometimes the videos are not necessarily the absolute best judgment of whether or not I like a printer. Of course, it doesn't mean that I'm lying to you guys. I would never say anything in any of my videos that I don't feel to be true. It just means that a particular snapshot in time may not be how I feel about the printer long term once I get more hours on it or once maybe a better printer comes along. But there is one metric that I think can judge and give us an accurate indication of just how much I like a printer, whether or not I actually use it long term. So I thought it might be really fun to give you guys a tour around the studio to show you which printers I've actually held onto over the years and which ones I haven't, as well as how many hours I've put on the ones that I've actually kept. I think that's an interesting proxy of information to tell you how good I actually think a printer is or how reliable it is. And with each one, I want to try and share with you why I've put so many hours on it or maybe why I haven't. Sometimes there will be explanations such as, hey, I haven't had this printer long enough to put more hours on it. But other times there might be some other information or updates that I have to what I said in my review that I think might be interesting. So let's get after it. So to kick things off, this is my Voron.
There are many like it, but this one is mine.
This was actually my first ever sponsored printer from any manufacturer. It's an LDO Motors Voron 2.4 350mm Rev 2. And I love this printer. It's been with me through thick and thin. It has been upgraded in all kinds of different ways. I have a half installed ERCF version 1 on there, which is going to be swapped out with the version 2. I use this printer a ton because it's super versatile. It's the largest build volume of any printer I currently have, and it can just do anything. It can do any material that I want. I have a diamond nozzle on there, so I can do abrasives. I can get up to the really high bed temperatures if I want to. This printer hasn't given me a lot of difficulties. It's kind of no fuss, no muss. Once you get it built, it's a tank. I think the IKEA effect is really at play here because this is my favorite printer out of all of them. That doesn't mean that it prints the best. It doesn't mean that it's even necessarily the most reliable of all my printers. But because I built it with my own two hands, because it was my first sponsored printer, I love it more than every other printer. I highly recommend this printer if you want a project, but I don't actually recommend it if you just want a printer that prints, because the hurdle, even with today's kits that are fully assembled, to actually getting this printer up and running, you're looking at weeks of work and a lot of tuning and a lot of tweaking. And even then, it's still on you to tweak everything and get it the way that you want. So I have over 1,200 hours on this printer. And I think it's important to note, first off, it is one of my oldest printers, so I've put a lot of time on it. It's also, as you'll go through, you'll notice that bigger printers tend to have more hours on them because it's really hard to rack up a lot of hours on a very small printer, whereas this one, I can put huge prints on it. Right now I have a 12-hour print going. And so you will notice that the bigger printers rack up more hours. It's also one of my faster printers. It now lives here in the studio, so it gets less usage than some of my printers at home, which I can run overnight while I'm there. I do leave it running overnight from time to time, but yeah, that's the Voron 2.4, also lovingly known as Python. So this is it, the printer that kind of launched my journey with this channel, my Prusa Mark IIIS Plus. This wasn't my first printer, but it was my first good one. First printer I built by far, and the first printer that was good enough that it allowed me to actually make content and reliably be able to print things that I could show on the channel and be proud of. I have a lot of love for this printer. I've put 135 days, 23 hours on it, which is an insane amount. At the speed this thing prints, I think that's like at least 7 or 8 prints. I've obviously stopped using this because it's very old and it's very slow, but what can you say? This is an icon and it's a phenomenal printer. I keep it around as a benchmark. Maybe one day I'm gonna get enough Prusa Mint points to upgrade it to a Mark 3.5 or Mark 3.9. But for now, I keep it here. I don't think I'll ever sell it. It belongs in a museum. My gosh, how many prints I put out on this. 135 days, 23 hours. That's in the 3,000 plus hours of print time on this thing, and it still runs great. I've swapped out the hot end to an E3D Revo, but I don't really, like I said, use the printer. And I have it connected to a little Mint-in Beagle so that I don't have to use SD cards if I want to use it. Yeah, a lot of love for this little printer. All right, and over here at my home, we have Cheetah, Bambu Lab X1 Carbon combo. I don't think I'm gonna surprise anyone when I say that this printer, after my oldest printer, the Prusa Mark 3S Plus, has the most print hours on it. One, because it was, I think, the second or third review printer I ever was given, and it is the second oldest printer I was ever given that I've actually kept after the Voron. So it does have a huge survivorship bias in just how long I have kept it. It also was my best performing printer for a long time when I only had the Prusa and the Voron, and this one was really performant. My only multicolor printer, which means that it can do long prints that take a long time. It's now rounding out over 1,800 hours on it, which I think surpasses the Voron 2.4. And again, part of that is multicolor prints. Part of that is it is just a phenomenal printer. It's probably the best printer out on the market today still. It's annoyed me. It's kind of finicky. It wants a lot of maintenance. It wants you to clean the rods. It wants you to clean the lead screws. The AMS has given me a lot of hassles. Loading and unloading filament has given me a lot of hassles with the AMS. But I have modified a lot of different things on it, from the hot end to doing the AMS Hydra mod, changing PTFE tubes to non-stock ones. So I probably can only blame myself on a lot of the issues that I've had with this printer. It has not had electronics issues like the X1 Carbon at the office. And another reason, by the way, that I use it so much is that I'm at home. And when I'm at the studio, I often don't have time to actually use the printers. I'm filming stuff, writing stuff for you guys. I'm busy making content for you guys. So this one has a survivorship bias, and it has home field advantage because it's home with me when I want to kick back. For people who aren't on a budget, it's probably still my go-to recommendation for the best no expense spared printer on the market right now. All right, up next, let's talk about the Bambu Lab P1S. I've had this less time than I've had, I think, both of my X1 Carbons. I was actually shocked to see that I only have like 270 hours on it, which seems not a lot because I use this way more in the studio than I use the X1 Carbon. I love this printer because it's a lot less fuss and muss. Like, it doesn't give me problems thinking that it's smarter than me with, say, oh, I didn't detect the right build plate, or false AI failure detections. I've also had fewer issues with the AMS of this one. On top of all that, I swapped out the hot end to an E3D Revo, the Panda Revo from Big Tree Tech. And that means that it makes it much easier on this printer to swap hot end than on the X1 Carbon. Not to mention the X1 Carbon, which I'll explain in a minute, has had way more issues. I use this printer a ton. It's probably one of my biggest go-tos in the studio. Absolutely love it. No complaints with it, especially I don't really use the lack of a touchscreen issue. And maybe it suffers a little bit from the smaller build volume. One of the reasons I use the Voron as much as I do, the 2.4. And yeah, it's been really great. I'm shocked that I only have 270 hours on it. I think that's just because here in the studio I have so many other printers, and because I've had this less than I've had the X1 Carbons. Remember this spot? We are back in my home where I keep this little guy, the LDO Voron 0.2 normal kit. This one, I did a little bit more of the building, so I feel a little bit more attached to it. I also printed the parts in my own color, my favorite color of ABS ASA, which is that same Polymaker orange ASA, orange and black ASA that I used on my other Voron, the 2.4. I called this one Viper because it is small and deadly. and I really love this printer. Actually, probably more than the Siboor Voron. It sounds better. The performance is just as good, and I actually took the Siboor upgrade fan that they sent me and I put it on this one because I use this one to print more PLA. It also has a Nevermore on there, and I use this predominantly when my X1 Carbon is occupied, or I'll use it for flexible filaments or abrasives when I want to print them at home. This one also has either a triangle lab or a diamond nozzle on there. And I always keep a 0.4 in there because I have the X1 Carbon here, usually running a 0.6. I have put on this one already 300 hours. It just crossed 300 hours, which is quite a bit considering, again, the small build volume. 300 hours is quite a lot of prints, but also the fact that I use it only at home and only when my dominant bigger printer is already running. Yeah, I really love this printer. It's my prototyping printer. It's faster and easier, not having to deal with the AMS if I just want to print something. Load up the filament right here on the honeycomb wall and get it going. And by the way, I am going to be uploading all my profiles for my printers that don't use standard profiles. So this one I have a profile that I've been refining for almost a year, and I'm going to be sharing all my profiles from now on with my Patreon supporters. So if you would like to get my Voron profiles, my faster profiles, my normal higher quality profiles, or profiles for upcoming printers that are not yet released, check out the link to our Patreon in the description. Up next, we have the in-studio X1 Carbon. Bambu Lab sent me this so that I would have an X1 Carbon in the studio, because I told them I love the X1 Carbon that I have at home so much that I was going to keep that at home for everyday use. Unfortunately, this one is a later production model. You would think it would have a lot of things fixed, but it actually gives me way more problems than the other one. I had this one down for literally months, like 2 or 3 months, because there was an issue with the tool head board. Now the AMS doesn't work because the main board has some sensor issue. Bambu Lab's been really great about having the local distributor or just them send me replacement parts. But this machine has given me way more issues than my other X1 Carbon or my P1S, which ultimately means that I use it a lot less. Now, I was surprised to find out that it actually has 350 hours on it. And I guess that's because I got it before I got my P1S. And for a while, it was, in fact, my most capable printer in the studio in terms of printing multicolor and all different kinds of things. My hours on this has dropped significantly since I got some of the other machines I'm going to show you. It's a great machine. Everyone will say it's a great machine. I think I've just had a lot of bad luck with it. I'm notoriously bad about maintaining my machines because I have so many of them. But also, I think I just got a lemon. I mean, I've had to replace the tool head board. Now I'm going to replace the main board. I'm going to have to probably replace the board in the AMS. So it's running. It's just given me a lot of problems. I think I got really unlucky with this one. All right, back here we have my 2 Bambu Lab A1 minis, the clear one, which is Lynx, and the normal production unit that everyone else got, which is Bobcat. I have put a lot of hours on these printers. One of them has 337 hours, the other one has 281, so a combined 600 hours. I will note that I loaned this one out to 2 different people, one person doing some charity work and another person, a local content creator. So a lot of those hours on this one were done by other people. But I use these printers a ton. I absolutely love them. They are probably my most reliable printers, believe it or not. If I'm just printing PLA, these printers are no fuss, no muss. They don't think they're smarter than you, like the X1 Carbon, and have false positives of LiDAR failure detection, things like that. They just work. I probably can count on one hand the number of print failures I've had on both of these printers combined. They're not great for printing PETG because the AMS light is out on the open. They don't print, ABS and all those kinds of materials. But if I just want to print PLA, especially if I want to print multicolor, I go to these machines because they're just so easy. They just work, they're fast, the print quality rivals the X1 Carbon, if not exceeds it. They're just really phenomenal printers. And personally, I mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of issues with different AMSs of my different X1 Carbons. The AMS light is way more reliable, especially with cardboard spools, which I use a lot of. Just phenomenal freaking printers. These are probably my top recommendation for beginners, even though I don't have a Bambu Lab affiliate account anymore. This is my recommendation for any beginner who wants to get in or wants to buy their kit a printer. These are just fantastic printers, which is why I've put 600 hours on them, even though they're newer than all my other Bambu machines. And you have to figure those hours mean a lot more because it is an extremely small build volume. So that means a lot of prints, just fantastic printers. Up next, let me introduce you to this little dude. It is a Siboor Voron 0.2 kit with the CNC'd aluminum parts. I keep this one in the studio. I haven't used it that much. It's not necessarily because I don't like it. It's just I have another one of these at home that you'll see a little bit later if you haven't already seen it. I keep this here. I keep it with a diamond nozzle from Triangle Lab on it, and I really only use it to print exotic materials. Because of the small build volume, it's not as versatile, but it is really, really great for heating up very, very quickly and staying hot. So if I need to print a polycarbonate or a carbon fiber nylon or something like that, this is a great printer. One thing I don't like about it is I think that the CNC'd parts generally tend to rattle a lot more, which is why it's named Rattlesnake. Yeah, it's a good printer. I think I've only put 67 hours on it because, again, with the small build volume, first off, that's a lot of prints on such a small build volume, but I just have many other printers that can do pretty much everything that this does. And I don't have as much of an emotional connection to this because I had a lot of help building it, thanks to Jacques and also Vladi. But it's a great, reliable printer when I just want to churn out really high temp materials quickly and easily. All right, let's just take a quick moment to thank this video's sponsor, which is PCBWay. You may know that PCBWay is able to do, obviously, PCB production for you, but what you may not know is that they can do everything from CNC machining to sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, industrial 3D printing, and much, much more. I've even had them 3D print some metal parts for me in the past and CNC machine aluminum for me, and every part I have ever ordered from them has come out at the utmost quality, speed, and reliability. So I highly recommend you check them out and visit the link in the description below to get $5 off as a sign-on bonus. And thank you to PCBWay for making these videos possible. All right, up next, let's take it over to Orca. And if you're wondering at this point, couldn't he have tidied up his print farm a little bit for this video? The answer is no. This is Orca, or the Sovol SV07 Plus. I also had an SV07. I recently let it go to someone who's doing charity work with kids and wanted just a great, reliable printer, because I kind of said I don't need an SV07 Plus and an SV07, and especially with the SV08, I have enough Sovol printers. So out with the old, in with the new. But this is just a phenomenal printer. I love it. It works really, really well. It is absolutely no fuss. I mean, it lets you do whatever you want. It's fully open source clipper. No nonsense. Uses a standardized nozzle, which the A1 minis don't. So it's really great. Right now I have a 1.0 nozzle on there. Super easy to swap to just any old Volcano nozzle. Large build volume, which is why I keep it. It's one of my only printers right now that can print 400 millimeters high. Doesn't do any multicolor, but the cooling's great for large prints with huge nozzles. It's super reliable. It's fast. I've had really no problems whatsoever with this printer, which is why I've put, I need to check and I'll put on the screen how many hours I've actually put on it, but I've put a lot of hours on this thing, especially considering I had the SV07 way before it, and I put a lot of hours on the SV07 as well. So great printer. I think I'll keep it around a little bit longer, even though the Comgrow T300 is kind of the same printer, but better. I like this thing. I still recommend it to people who want a budget printer that's really, really big. If you want to print helmets and you don't want to spend Voron money or K1 Max money, like, how can you beat this thing for what they charge for it and the speed and the open sourceness? It's hard to beat. All right, here's another shot that you probably remember from earlier on in the channel's history. Another printer that is notably missing but is normally in the studio is the Creality K1C, not the K1, the K1C, which I call Greyhound because it is relatively simple, fast, sleek, gray color, and many of the other animal families are already taken. So my review of that printer was a full, unbiased, complete review, not sponsored content or anything like that, and I stand by everything I said. That is a really, really phenomenal printer. It is super reliable. I've put probably about 140, 150 hours on that printer. and it has been nothing but a joy. I use it when I need something to print reliably with really, really high quality at a 0.4 millimeter nozzle, because unlike a lot of my other printers that can print the ABSs and the composites, I don't have a replacement nozzle for that. So I can't swap it up to a 0.6 or 0.8. But it's just worked great for me. The profiles are really well tuned. The only thing that keeps me from printing on it more is the 220 by 220 build volume is smaller than, say, a Bambu Lab. You might think that 256 is not that much bigger, but it does make a difference. And then especially with my Voron, which I can print anything with at 350. But I use this printer and I like it a lot. You guys remember Shark, the Sovol SV08. Really good printer, had a little bit of a bumpy start with the Z drift issues. Currently, because I destroyed it trying to upgrade it, I'm printing out a new tool head by Nadir. Subscribe if you want to see me build that. And I'm just waiting out a bunch of fans arriving in the mail. So I'm going to be building kind of a really cool tool head for this that nobody has yet done. This is a great printer. I don't know that I should have upgraded it, honestly. Especially now that I see Teaching Tech is doing a tool changer with this. I kind of regret that I even opened the can of worms. I should have just, I kind of wanted to, because I wanted to see how upgradable it is. Anyway, I haven't put a lot of hours on it. The Z drift issue was kind of annoying. The noise was kind of annoying. I will use this a lot once I have a tool head on there where I can actually replace the nozzles. I'm really tempted by that tool changer that Teaching Tech is doing. So if he has success, I might downgrade the tool head and actually do a tool changer out of this. But it's a great printer. I do plan to use it, even though I have a printer with the exact same dimensions, the Voron 2.4 Python. The motion system is really good. It's fast. It's faster than my Voron 2.4. I do recommend it. Like I said, I kind of wish that I hadn't destroyed it, but I just couldn't get over the nozzle being proprietary and not having any extra nozzles, and being on a 0.4 nozzle on a printer of this size was absurd to me. And also a printer this capable not having a higher flow hot end. It all just bothered me to the point where I said I'm going to replace the hot end, and then I damaged the tool head board, and then it just became this whole can of worms. I need to be more careful with my printers. So yeah, that's Shark. By the way, in there are all the resin printers and the laser cutters. Let's be honest, you don't really care. I don't really care. I'll put the stats up on the screen of how much I've used each of the resin printers that I currently have for those of you who are interested, but you guys don't really seem to like resin content. Comment below if I'm wrong about that, but yeah, let's not waste time in there. Up next, let's go ahead and take a look at another LDO kit printer, which is the Positron 3.2. This is a portable printer, obviously. And I have not put a lot of hours on this printer. I've tried to, but I got a really, really early pre-production unit, which had some issues specifically around heating and the thermistor and not being able to maintain heat. So you can see they've sent me the replacement part that is supposed to fix that. I just haven't gotten around to installing it. I actually took this all the way to California with me and tried to do some PETG prints there. Didn't have a lot of success. The bed leveling is still really tricky to get right every time you fold it and put it back together, because there are 2 screws instead of 3, like on another small printer like a Voron 0.2. And when you adjust the offset to adjust the back, it also adjusts the front. So it's tricky to get it right. Sometimes takes 15-20 minutes to get the perfect bed level. I don't have a reason to set this up. I have 2 printers at home and a dozen printers at the office, so this is really only my going away for the weekend printer if I'm going somewhere where I think I'm gonna need a 3D printer, maybe like my in-laws' house. I think it has a lot of potential. I think I need to get better with my workflow, and obviously this fixed better work. It has to work, otherwise the thermal issue where it can't heat the hot end is just a problem. So I probably have less than 150 hours on this printer, which is a pretty good amount for a printer that isn't yet working properly. Yeah, I just haven't had the time to really invest in getting this thing working the way that I want it, and I don't really have the incentive. I've already put out the video. Other projects are calling. But I do love this printer nonetheless, just because it's so cool, it's so innovative, and if I can get it working properly, I'll use it a lot more. All right, come on down and meet Narwal, also known as the Comgrow T300. I called it Narwal because you kind of look at it and go, why does it exist? It's a good printer, but I think they started the R&D for this before Comgrow and Sovol announced that they were going to be merging. And so they released it, but it's kind of like, I'd rather have the SV08, and the SV08 isn't much more money. But it's a good printer. I haven't put really any hours on this thing at all because the profiles and macros and firmware were not ready. And then once I finished the live stream, I have the SV07 Plus working perfectly. So why would I waste my time and energy getting this thing going perfectly when it's the same print size, build volume? Also, open source, it's basically the same thing, but just much more rigid and it can go a lot faster. But I don't have any other nozzles for it, so it uses that proprietary nozzle that Sovol is shipping on the SV08. And I don't like that nozzle. I don't have any of the other ones, and it's a 0.4 in there right now. So I just haven't spent any time on it. I think I will keep it just to churn out great prints. I think it has the potential because of the rigidity, the weight of it, and the build and the construction quality. I think it has the potential to churn out big parts faster and at better quality than the SV08 Plus. And if that is the case, and if I can get more of these nozzles from Sovol in all different kinds of sizes, I may replace the SV07 Plus with this. But for now, I don't really see a reason to use it, so I haven't used it. I maybe have like 30 hours on it or less. That's not an indictment of the printer, but when you have as many printers as I do, if there isn't a specific reason, you're probably noticing each printer I think of for a specific reason. Like, okay, this one has a diamond nozzle on it. I can print composites easily without doing anything. Or this one has a really, really good multicolor system. This one is like, okay, cool. I have other printers that print this big. I have other printers that print this fast. So there's kind of no reason for me to use it. Sorry, Comgrow. I'm actually going to make a spreadsheet of every single printer that I've ever owned and how I felt about it. So if you want to know why I got rid of all the printers that you didn't see in this video and what was wrong with them and why I don't recommend them, I'm going to make that spreadsheet available to our Patreon community. So you can check the link in the description if that's something you're interested in, as well as my profiles for all my different printers, exclusive content, discounts, you know, all that good stuff. Come on down here so we can find a place to sit and talk about the AnyCubic Kobra 3 combo. I did some sponsored content around this, which meant that I wasn't really able to share kind of my raw opinions, but I also think it's not yet ready at the time of this recording to share those opinions. I see a lot of potential in this machine. The hardware is really, really good. I don't like that AnyCubic insists on doing things in the proprietary way. So I'm happy that they're gonna allow me to use Orca Slicer. I haven't put a lot of hours on this, under 100. I don't think it gives me a way to check, again, apropos proprietary software. I haven't put a ton of hours on it, but I see the potential. And because I don't have a Bambu Lab A1, I'm keeping it around for larger multicolor prints with a more reliable system than the original AMS, which I think this Ace Pro is gonna be more reliable because it has all 4 filaments feeding up here. It's hard to say what's gonna happen, but the fact that I can use Orca Slicer profiles if and when they allow me to use local web interface access, you know, you can kind of just ignore all the AnyCubic cloud stuff and their proprietary slicer. So I'm keeping it around, which is more than I could say for the Kobra 2 series, which also I got the hardware way, way, way before the software was ready and decided not to keep those printers because I do see there's a lot of potential. But yeah, I haven't put a lot of hours on it. It's so new, and AnyCubic notoriously sends stuff out way, 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 way before the software is ready. So I'm just waiting. I literally yesterday asked them, hey, can I get the new profiles for Orca Slicer? Have you guys improved them? Because I want to use this thing. I think it's gonna be a really, really good printer when they let you actually get under the hood and use the profiles the way that you want, use the printer the way that you want.